The crystal chandelier above the dining hall shimmered like frozen rain, casting tiny shards of light across the long oak table. Laughter bounced off the high, arched ceiling. Every detail of the Graves estate dinner party was picture-perfect, from the custom-imported wines to the string quartet humming softly in the background. It was meant to be an evening to remember. And it was. But not for the reasons anyone expected. Elena moved swiftly through the room, dressed in a crisp black and white uniform, her hair tied neatly in a bun. She balanced a silver tray with practiced grace, clearing empty flutes and replacing used napkins without interrupting the flow of conversation. She had been working at the Graves estate for just over a month. Quiet, observant, invisible, exactly how a maid should be. No one noticed her. Until the ring fell. It happened in the blink of an eye. A guest stood to reach for something, and the edge of his jacket brushed against Elena's hand. The tray wobbled slightly, and in the same motion, her hand brushed against the edge of the linen. The ring, snug but a bit loose from the dishwater earlier, slid off and hit the polished marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo endlessly. Clink. 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 Everything stopped. The music. The conversation. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Michael Graves, seated at the head of the table, didn't blink. His eyes dropped to the small silver ring that spun once, twice, and finally stilled at his feet. For a moment, no one moved. And then Elena crouched quickly, scooping it up. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," she said, her cheeks red. Michael stared at her. No, not at her. At the ring. He didn't say a word. His breathing became shallow. A film of sweat glistened on his forehead. Slowly, he pushed his chair back and stood. The legs screeched loudly against the floor. "Excuse me," he muttered, voice hollow. "I need a moment." He walked out of the room. No explanation. No apology. Just silence in his wake. At first, the guests looked around awkwardly. Some chuckled. Others took sips of wine, whispering behind hands. But Sarah, Michael's personal assistant for the past 11 years, felt a chill crawl down her spine. She had seen that ring before. Not in a jewelry store. Not in a catalog. In a photograph. One she was never supposed to see. She had found it 9 years ago, buried in a box labeled "Private," inside Michael's locked office drawer. The ring was on the hand of a woman, dark-haired, smiling sadly, standing beside a younger Michael. The photo was old, almost 25 years. Sarah had never dared to ask. She knew enough about the Graves family history to keep quiet. But now, that same ring was on the finger of a maid named Elena. And Michael's reaction confirmed it. This wasn't just coincidence. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Later that night, after the last car rolled down the gravel driveway and the laughter faded into distant memory, Sarah walked down the hallways of the mansion, guided only by the soft glow of antique sconces. She found Elena in the staff quarters, sitting on the edge of her small bed, staring at the ring in her palm. "You kept it on," Sarah said softly. Elena looked up, startled. She quickly closed her hand over the ring. "Oh. Miss Sarah. I didn't hear you come in. Can I see it?" There was hesitation in her eyes. But something about Sarah's expression, concerned, not accusing, convinced her. Elena slowly opened her fingers and held out the ring. It was a plain silver band, worn smooth by time, but engraved on the inside in tiny script, "Forever, M." Sarah's throat went dry. Her eyes widened. "I know that ring," she said, barely audible. Elena tilted her head. "You do?" Sarah nodded slowly. "It belonged to someone, very important. A woman named Lila." The color drained from Elena's face. "That was my mother's name," she whispered. Sarah sat down beside her. Elena. Do you know who your mother really was? I only know fragments, Elena admitted. She died when I was 9. At least. I think she did. My aunt raised me afterward, but she never talked about my mother's past. I only have one picture of her. And this ring. Sarah was silent for a long moment. She was Michael Graves' wife, she said finally. She vanished in 2002. They searched for months. Police, private investigators, even the media. But no body, no trace. Just, gone. She walked out of this house one night and never came back. Elena clutched the ring tighter, her voice trembling. My aunt told me my mother was running from something. She was scared, paranoid. Sometimes she would wake up screaming. And she always told me never to trust rich men. Especially ones with power. Sarah stared at her. Why did you apply to work here? I didn't, Elena said. I never applied. I got an anonymous message a month ago. A handwritten letter. No name, just a return address in upstate New York. It said if I wanted to know who my mother really was, I had to get close to Michael Graves. The silence between them stretched like a crack in glass. Sarah reached for her bag and pulled out an old photo from her files, the one she had secretly copied years ago. She handed it to Elena. It was unmistakable. The same woman. Dark hair. Gentle eyes. Holding a baby in her arms. Elena. My God, Elena whispered, tears filling her eyes. She was here. Sarah nodded. And Michael knew. He recognized the ring immediately. Then why didn't he say anything? Because if your mother really vanished to escape him, Sarah whispered, he has something to hide. Elena stood up suddenly. Her voice was firmer now. Then I have to know the truth. No more secrets. No more hiding. Sarah hesitated. You could be walking into something dangerous. We don't know what happened back then. Or what he's capable of. Elena looked down at the ring. I've spent my whole life not knowing who I am, she said. If this ring scared a billionaire into running out of his own dining room, then there's something buried here that someone didn't want me to find. Upstairs, in the master study, Michael Graves stood in front of a locked cabinet. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside were 4 items. A dusty photo album. A letter marked confidential. A small music box. And a journal, its leather cover cracked with age. He picked up the journal and opened it to the bookmarked page. July 14, 2002. I told Michael the truth tonight. He didn't take it well. Said he'd protect me. But I know what that means. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Michael closed the book and sat down heavily. He had thought the past was dead. But tonight, it had come back, wearing a maid's uniform, carrying a silver tray. And his wife's ring. The morning sun filtered weakly through the mansion's tall windows, gilding the hardwood floors in golden light. But no warmth touched the corridors of the Graves estate that day. The house was quiet. Too quiet. In the servants' wing, Elena sat at the edge of her bed, her fingers curled tightly around the silver ring. It felt heavier today. As if it had absorbed the weight of every memory, every question that had been locked away in the shadows of this house. Her heart still raced from the conversation with Sarah the night before. Her mother. Her real identity. The unanswered questions. But there was no time for panic. She hadn't come here to cry or run. She had come to know. Sarah had promised to help. In the kitchen, the silence broke with the faint ticking of the antique wall clock and the distant clink of cups being arranged. Sarah stood by the coffee machine, pouring strong black coffee into a porcelain mug. She didn't sleep much. Not after what she'd seen last night. Her hand still trembled when she thought about the journal, the one she had seen in Michael's private study 5 years ago. The same journal she wasn't supposed to touch. The one that belonged to Lila Graves. She had only read a few lines back then. But those lines had never left her. And now Elena was here. The daughter of a woman who vanished, and possibly escaped. Or was silenced. The air in the house felt haunted now. Not by ghosts, but by truths that had clawed their way back from the grave. Around 10:15 a.m., Elena stepped into Sarah's office with her usual quiet footsteps. But this time, her voice had a new strength. "Sarah," she said you saw something once. "A journal?" Sarah looked up, surprised. "Yes. Years ago. I wasn't supposed to touch it. But Michael had left his study open, and I was curious. Do you remember what it said?" Sarah nodded. "Only one entry. July 14, 2002. Lila said she had told Michael the truth. But she was afraid. She said, 'If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident.'" Elena exhaled slowly. As if trying to contain an invisible storm inside her. "I need to see that journal," she said. Sarah looked hesitant. "That room is locked now. He keeps it guarded when he's away. And if he suspects anything..." "I'll take that risk," Elena said. "I didn't come here to live in fear. I've done that long enough." Sarah hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Tonight," she said. "After 1 a.m. He takes sleeping pills and doesn't wake easily. I'll get you in. But if we're caught..." "We won't be," Elena said. "We can't be." That evening, as the staff retired and the mansion dimmed into a blanket of silence, Michael Graves sat in his dimly lit study with a glass of scotch in hand. The fire crackled low in the hearth. His eyes stared into it blankly, lost in memory, or maybe regret. He opened the drawer to the side cabinet and pulled out the envelope again. It was yellowed with age, sealed with wax, and marked with his wife's handwriting. To be opened only if she never came back. He had never opened it. He had burned her letters, her clothes, her photographs. All except this. He didn't know why. But now, the ring had returned. And the girl, Elena, had her eyes. Lila's eyes. 1:12 a.m. Sarah's hands moved quickly over the lock. She was nervous. The key was old, the door stiff, and any sound echoed like thunder in the quiet mansion. Click. The lock turned. She opened the door slowly, and motioned for Elena to follow. They stepped inside the study. It smelled of old paper, leather, and something deeper, something like time that had never been allowed to move forward. The walls were lined with bookshelves. A grand oak desk stood at the center. On one side, the same cabinet from the night before. Sarah moved to it, pulled out a second key from her necklace, and unlocked the drawer. There it was. A worn, leather-bound journal. Elena took it in her hands as though it might shatter. She sat at the desk and opened to the first entry. Journal of Lila Graves. February 3, 2002. I don't know who to trust anymore. Michael's charm is fading. His smiles feel like masks. I overheard a call last night. He said, she won't be a problem much longer. I think he meant me. March 12, 2002. I tried to talk to him. He said I was paranoid. Told me to rest. Said I was imagining things. But I found a locked drawer in his study. Inside it, a photo of me. And a blank birth certificate. My name was crossed out. May 29, 2002. Someone has been following me. A man in a gray coat. I saw him again at the grocery store. When I told Michael, he got angry, not worried. Said, "That's what happens when you ask too many questions." Elena's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. July 14, 2002. I told Michael the truth tonight. I had to. I couldn't live with it anymore. I told him about Elena. About what I did before we married. About her father. He went still. Then furious. He smashed a glass. Said no one could ever know. Not even the child. Especially not the child. He said I'd ruined everything. And then, he said he could make it all go away. Just like that. I'm leaving tonight. If you find this, Sarah, I trusted you once. Please protect her. Tell her the truth someday. Her name is Elena. And she was born in this house. But she was never meant to stay. Elena couldn't breathe. Her mother's words felt like lightning splitting the sky inside her. She tried to protect me, she whispered. She left because of me. Sarah placed a hand on her shoulder. She left to save you. That's not your fault. Then she paused. Wait. Did you see that? She pointed to a slip of paper folded and tucked into the last page. Elena pulled it out. It was a map. Of the mansion. But not just the mansion. Beneath it, a tunnel. Michael's POV, at the same time, upstairs. Michael awoke suddenly. Something felt wrong. His mouth was dry. The fire had gone out. He sat up in his chair, the Scotch glass still clutched in his hand. He looked around the room. The cabinet drawer. Open. The journal. Gone. He stood quickly. She knows, he whispered. And somewhere deep inside his chest, something broke loose. A long-dormant panic. The kind only known by men who built empires on secrets. Back in the study, Elena and Sarah examined the map closely. It pointed to the east wing. A sealed door in the wine cellar. We have to go now, Elena said. Sarah nodded. The air grew colder as they descended into the stone-arched cellar, their footsteps muffled on the dust-covered steps. Bottles of wine stood like silent sentinels on either side. At the end of the corridor, a solid iron door. The keyhole was strange. Oval-shaped. Not meant for any ordinary key. Elena looked at the ring on her finger. She twisted it off and studied it. Tiny ridges along the side. A hidden groove. She slid a nail under the groove and it clicked open like a locket. Inside, a thin piece of metal. A key. She inserted it into the door. It turned. The door groaned open. Inside, the air was stale. The room smelled of mold and old secrets. A single bulb flickered on from the ceiling. In the center of the room was a metal trunk. Elena approached slowly, heart pounding. She opened it. Inside were photos. Dozens. Of her mother. Of her as a baby. Some smiling. Some crying. Some with Michael. And letters. Letters written by Lila. None ever sent. All addressed to Elena. One read. My darling girl, if you are reading this, it means I couldn't escape completely. I tried. For you. I want you to know, Michael is not your father. I married him to survive. But your real father's name was Daniel. He died before you were born. He was kind. And he loved music. Like you. They made me give you a new identity. They made me stay quiet. But I never stopped loving you. Forgive me. Elena fell to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even scared anymore. She was whole. She finally knew. And that was power. But then. Footsteps. Loud. Slow. Approaching. Sarah turned white. We have to go. Now. But it was too late. Michael stood in the doorway. You found it, he said. His voice was hollow. Elena stood up, slowly, the letters still in her hand. You lied to me my whole life, she said. You stole her from me. I protected you, Michael said. From her. From the truth. From everything. You protected yourself, Elena said. But the truth's out now. Michael stared at her for a long, long time. Then his shoulders dropped. And for the first time, he looked old. You have her fire, he whispered. And her eyes. He turned and walked away. No threats. No shouts. Just silence. Elena couldn't sleep that night. The letters from her mother lay neatly stacked on the nightstand beside her, still smelling faintly of old paper and lavender. She had read each one 3 times, some aloud, some through silent tears. She now knew what the ring meant. She knew who her real father was. And she knew that the woman she had idolized in fragments, half-dreams and fading childhood memories, had loved her more than she could ever understand. But what she didn't know, and what kept her awake as the moon climbed higher over the dark silhouette of the Graves estate, was what had really happened to Lila. Her mother didn't just disappear. She was made to disappear. And the one man who had the answers had walked away without a word. At breakfast the next morning, the household operated as though nothing had happened. Silverware clinked, tea steamed in delicate bone china cups, and staff moved through their routines like clockwork. But the air was different. Denser. Heavy with the scent of unspoken truths. Michael Graves sat at the far end of the table, dressed immaculately in his tailored navy suit. But he looked tired, not physically, but soul-deep tired. The kind that no amount of sleep could ever cure. Elena entered with a tray of fresh croissants. Her steps were steady. Her face calm. But her eyes met his, and lingered. Something passed between them. Not rage. Not even fear. Recognition. He gave a small nod. And that was enough. An hour later, she found herself summoned to the study again. The journal sat on the desk. The cabinet was open. The fire crackled like a restless spirit. Michael stood at the window, looking out at the estate grounds. When Elena stepped inside, he didn't turn. You read it, he said. Yes, she replied. All of it. He exhaled through his nose. Then I suppose you know the kind of man I am. Elena took a breath. I don't think I know that yet. But I'm here to find out. Michael turned finally. There was something different in his eyes now, not the ice of a tycoon, but the exhaustion of a man who had been carrying a secret too long. She didn't tell you everything, he said quietly. He walked over to the desk and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a photograph. 2 young men in their 20s. One tall and lean, with a wild smile. The other, Michael. Stiff. But smiling genuinely. That's Daniel, he said, tapping the smiling man's face. My father, Elena said. Michael nodded. My best friend. And the only man who ever truly challenged me. He walked to the bar cart, poured himself a drink, but didn't touch it. She met him before she met me. Lila. She was a waitress at a music cafe in Chicago. Daniel played jazz piano there. They fell in love fast. Too fast. What happened to him? Elena asked. Michael laughed once, dry, bitter. He died, he said. But not in some tragic accident like your mother claimed. He looked at her. He died because of me. The words hung in the air like a noose. Elena stepped back, a sudden wave of nausea building in her chest. You killed him? No, Michael said sharply. But I may as well have. He sat down, eyes distant. I loved Lila. I met her after Daniel brought her to one of our fundraising events. He was trying to convince some donors to fund a community music school. She wore this red dress, simple but radiant. Everyone noticed her. Including me. He paused. I knew I had money. Power. And Daniel, well, he had music and hope. But he was struggling. Living in a shared apartment. No insurance. She deserved more. I convinced myself of that. Elena's voice was low. You stole her. Michael looked her dead in the eyes. I bought out Daniel's dream. Quietly. The community center went under. I offered Lila a job, helping with our charitable foundation. She took it. 1 month later, she stopped answering Daniel's calls. She was pregnant, Elena whispered. Michael nodded. She didn't tell him. Not even me. I didn't find out until a month after we married. And then? I lied. I told her I'd raise the child as my own. I even promised to make things right with Daniel. But I didn't. I let him disappear. I made it easier for him to leave the city. I paid off his debts, moved him to a dead-end job in Arizona. Why? She asked. Because I loved her. And because I couldn't bear to see her with anyone else. He looked away. She never forgave me. Elena sat down slowly, trying to take it all in. You could have told the truth, she said. She would have respected that. Michael's expression hardened. The truth doesn't win loyalty. Power does. And I had it. There was silence. Then he said something that changed everything. She left once. But she came back. 1 week before she disappeared for good. Elena blinked. What? She returned. Unexpected. Her hair was shorter. She'd lost weight. Said she wanted a second chance. I didn't ask questions. I let her in. Why? Elena asked. Because I loved her. And because I was lonely. He took another breath. But I wasn't the only one she came to see. That night, Elena combed through the letters again, and sure enough, tucked behind the final page of the journal, was a torn note. It wasn't signed. It simply read. He's still alive. But not for long. If you want to see him again, come to the cabin. I'll wait until Sunday. After that, it's too late. Elena showed it to Sarah the next morning. Sarah frowned. The cabin, that could mean the Graves' old hunting lodge. Michael sold it years ago, but it's still on the land registry. Deep in the woods, north of the property. About 2 hours away. Then that's where I'm going, Elena said. Sarah grabbed her wrist. You don't know who sent that note. Or what's waiting there. I don't care, Elena said. If my real father is alive, or if he was, I need to know. Sunday 4:40 p.m. The lodge. The gravel road leading to the lodge was broken and overgrown. Elena drove in silence, the trees crowding closer as the car moved deeper into the woods. When she finally reached the cabin, the sun was dipping below the treetops, casting long shadows over the crumbling porch and peeling paint. It looked abandoned. She stepped out of the car, heart pounding. Inside, the air was musty. Dust danced in the light. The floor creaked beneath her feet. And then, a sound. From upstairs. A cough. Raspy. Weak. She took the stairs 2 at a time. And there he was. Old. Thin. gray-bearded. Sitting in a wheelchair by the window. He looked up. "Elena," he rasped. She froze. "Are you Daniel?" His lips trembled. "You have your mother's eyes." She rushed to him. "I thought you were dead." "I almost was," he said. "More than once." Flashback, Daniel's story. He had been forced to leave Chicago after his career was mysteriously sabotaged. Anonymous threats. Stolen equipment. Cancelled shows. He suspected Michael, but couldn't prove it. Then Lila stopped calling. He left the city, broken. One night, years later, a woman came to his trailer. Lila. With a child in her arms. She told him the truth. That the child was his. That she had been trapped. That she had to go back to get proof. She left Elena with him for 2 days. Then disappeared. He never saw her again. Elena listened, tears streaking down her face. "You raised me for 2 days?" she whispered. He nodded. "I still remember the way you laughed," he said, "when I played the piano." She reached for his hand. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more," he said. "You did enough," she whispered. Back at the estate, Michael sat in his empty study, holding the last letter Lila had written him. "I forgive you. But I can't stay." He stared out the window as thunder rolled in the distance. The past was no longer behind him. It was walking back into his life, one truth at a time. The rain came hard the night Elena returned from the cabin. It wasn't just a storm, it was as if the world itself was purging something. Washing away secrets too heavy for dry earth. Elena sat in the back of the car as Sarah drove through winding roads, her thoughts looping like an old film reel. Her real father, Daniel, still alive, hidden away like a ghost in a forgotten chapter. Her mother's return. Her mysterious disappearance again. Too many pieces, but the picture was forming. And one thing was clear now. Someone didn't want Lila to be found. When they reached the Graves estate, the driveway was empty. No security. No lights in the study. Michael was gone. Sarah noticed first. "He's not here." Elena frowned. He wouldn't run. Unless he knew something was coming. Inside the mansion, Elena climbed the staircase 2 steps at a time, rushing into Michael's study. Everything looked the same, until she noticed the small brass key lying in the center of the desk. It was placed with intent. She recognized it. It matched a drawer in the old gallery room, the one no one ever went into. Sarah followed her in silence as they crossed the east wing. The room was dim, dust floating in shafts of moonlight. Oil paintings lined the walls, portraits of past Graves generations. Mostly somber men, stern wives, elegant children. Elena moved straight to the carved oak cabinet near the back. She inserted the brass key. Click. Inside was a leather portfolio, thick, brittle with age. And within it, a photograph. Elena pulled it out with trembling fingers. It was her mother. Young, glowing, dressed in a navy coat. Standing beside Michael Graves, and a woman Elena had never seen before. The woman's hand rested on Michael's shoulder like it belonged there. A wedding ring sparkled on her finger. Written on the back. Michael, Lila, and Catherine, September 1995. Elena whispered, "Catherine?" Sarah stepped closer. That was Michael's wife. Before she disappeared. The room suddenly felt colder. She disappeared? Elena asked. Sarah nodded. Rumor was, suicide. She left one night. Body never found. The family never spoke of it again. And Lila was in this photo, with her? They both stared at the image. 3 people. One of them erased from history. The other dead. And only Michael still standing. That night, Elena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. She called Daniel, or rather, the small burner phone he'd been left with. He answered after 3 rings, his voice raspy. "I found a photograph," she told him. "You, my mother, and Michael's wife. All in one frame." Silence. Then Daniel said, "Then it's time you knew the rest." Flashback, Daniel's truth. 15 years ago, 2010. Daniel had returned to the city secretly in 2010 after years in hiding. Lila had reached out. She said she'd finally left Michael, that she'd taken something from his safe, documents, photographs, enough to bring him down. She said she was scared. She asked him to meet her at the train station. But she never arrived. Instead, Daniel received a package a week later. Inside was a photograph. The same one Elena had just found. And a note. She knew too much. They were both in love with her. The next morning, Elena packed her bag. She knew what she had to do. Michael hadn't run away. He had gone back, to where it had all started. And if she was right, it wasn't to hide. It was to confess. The hidden house. 2 hours outside the city. Sarah helped her locate it. A property that had once belonged to Catherine Graves' family. Technically, sold after her disappearance, but the Graves family had kept ownership through a shell company. They found the house after dusk, nestled deep in pine woods, cloaked in ivy and shadows. There was only one light on, in the study. Michael was there. Sitting in an armchair. A single folder sat on the table beside him. He didn't flinch when she walked in. "You found the photo," he said. "Yes," Elena replied. "And now I need the truth." He gestured for her to sit. The folder was old. Inside were legal documents, letters, and more photographs. One of them showed Catherine, bruised. Another showed Lila, standing outside a courtroom. "She was going to help Catherine leave me," Michael said. "They were friends." "More than that, I think." Elena blinked. "What do you mean?" "I think she was the only person Catherine trusted. The only one she ever smiled around. And when Catherine found out what I did to Daniel. The sabotage, the payoffs, she threatened to go public. Lila said she'd testify." Elena's stomach churned. "So what happened?" "I begged her not to," he whispered. "I was losing my business, my wife, my future." Lila said she didn't care. That the truth mattered more. He looked at Elena. "So I gave her an offer. I'd disappear. Leave the country. Give up the company. Let them expose me. But she vanished instead," Elena said. Michael nodded, eyes red. "I swear to you, I didn't hurt her. But I think someone else did." He handed her the last document. A police report. Filed by Catherine Graves, 3 months before her disappearance. Accused, William Ashford, Michael's lawyer, enforcer, and the Graves family fixer. "He was the one who cleaned up all our messes," Michael said. "If anyone knew what really happened, it was him." Elena's voice was sharp. "Where is he now?" Michael hesitated. "He left the firm 5 years ago. Retired. Lives up north. Changed his name." Elena stood. "Then I'm going to find him." 2 days later, northern coastline. It took some effort, and Sarah's investigative skills, to locate William Ashford. Now living under the name Gregory Sloane, he occupied a seaside cottage, alone, under heavy medication and early-onset dementia. But when Elena showed him the photograph of Lila, his eyes flickered. And when she asked about Catherine, he grew pale. "I told them not to," he said. I said it would go wrong. Told who? Elena asked. He closed his eyes. They didn't mean to kill her. Just scare her. Stop her from talking. Which one? She asked. Catherine or Lila? He opened one eye. Both. He said the night Lila disappeared, she had gone to confront Catherine. But someone else arrived. Someone hired by Ashford. They said, a warning. Just a warning. But things got out of control. The bodies were never found. He looked at Elena, lips trembling. She trusted me. I failed them. Elena left the house shaken. She now had confirmation. Neither woman left by choice. Someone orchestrated both their disappearances, possibly murder. And that person had operated from within the Graves empire. Ashford had been the puppet master, but who had pulled his strings? Back at the Graves estate. Elena returned to the estate a week later. Daniel was waiting in the garden, pale, frail, but alive. He'd been moved closer, into a clinic nearby. Elena visited him daily now. Michael, however, had withdrawn completely. He left the company. Donated most of his fortune to a new foundation in Lila's name. Moved out of the estate. But he left Elena one final gift. In his will, he transferred ownership of the estate to her, not out of guilt, he wrote, but redemption. You were always the only part of me worth saving. 3 months later, a new beginning. Elena opened the Lila Foundation for Justice and Truth, dedicated to investigating cold cases involving missing women. The first 2 names on its wall. Catherine Graves. Lila Moreno. Her story, The Maid with the Mysterious Ring, had spread like wildfire. The media dubbed it the Graves Estate Mystery. But Elena knew the truth wasn't for headlines. It was for healing. She visited Daniel every Sunday. They played piano. Laughed. Remembered the woman who had connected them. And every night, Elena wore the ring. Not because it was expensive. But because it had survived. Like her. 1 year later. The Graves estate no longer belonged to the Graves. The once majestic mansion had been transformed, not just structurally, but spiritually. The opulent tapestries and silent hallways had given way to warm lights, quiet music, and people, real people, with stories, memories, and pain they'd carried too long. It was now the headquarters of the Lila Foundation, one of the most recognized human rights organizations in the country. Elena stood in the garden, her garden now, wearing a navy coat that mirrored one her mother once wore. On her finger gleamed the same old ring. And in her hand was a letter. The last piece of the puzzle. 6 months earlier. Elena had thought the mystery was behind her. The truth had come out, her mother, Lila, and Michael's wife, Catherine, had both vanished because they were threats, to a legacy built on secrets. William Ashford's confession had confirmed the violence wasn't random. It had been orchestrated to silence. And though the system refused to prosecute him, citing age, mental condition, and insufficient contemporary evidence, Elena wasn't done. She needed a body. She needed proof. But most of all, she needed peace. And that peace would only come from one place. The hidden garden behind the cabin. It was Daniel who mentioned it, casually, during a piano session. She used to say, the pine trees up north reminded her of Spain. Said if anything happened to her, she wanted to be buried beneath the ivy. He chuckled faintly. Thought it was poetic nonsense. But now. Elena froze. Beneath the ivy. He meant the old garden. The one behind the cabin where Daniel had lived. The place Lila had once taken her as a child, before Elena's memories had faded. She drove there alone that same evening. It was dusk when she arrived. And the ivy was still there. Wild. Untamed. Creeping across the broken stones like time itself. And beneath it, a slab. Old. Stone. Half buried. She dug for hours. Hands raw, breath sharp, heart ready for anything, except what she found. A body. Wrapped in fabric. Preserved unnaturally well. And beside it, a bracelet with the initials, C.G. Catherine Graves. Police arrived within the hour. The investigation reopened. But Catherine's remains weren't the only thing beneath that earth. Tucked in a rusted metal tin near the grave was a journal, sealed in a plastic bag. Elena stared at it for days before opening it. The handwriting inside belonged to Lila. Lila's journal. Extracted from entries dated September, October 2010. She didn't deserve what he did to her. Catherine was kind. She loved the idea of family, even if she couldn't trust the one she had. I knew she wanted out, but I didn't think he'd go that far. I've made arrangements with Daniel. He'll take Elena if anything happens. But I'm scared. Ashford watches me everywhere I go. I don't trust Michael anymore. I think he knows. Catherine told me she had photos. Documents. She gave them to me. I'm hiding them where no one will look, not in the estate, not in the city. Somewhere only someone like me would go. Somewhere beneath the ivy. Elena showed the journal to the authorities. Search teams returned. And 2 days later, they uncovered a waterproof bag near Catherine's grave. Inside were photographs. Legal letters. Tapes. Evidence of fraud. Violence. Payoffs. And something else. A recorded confession. Ashford's voice. Nervous. Breathless. She won't stop, Michael. I told you she wouldn't. We have to choose. If she talks, everything's gone. The firm. The money. Everything. I can make it quiet. But I'll need your word. Just say it. Say yes. And Michael's voice, cold. Yes. The news broke the next morning. Michael Graves, the billionaire philanthropist who had vanished, was officially wanted for conspiracy to commit murder. The foundation issued no statement. Elena stayed silent. Until one day, a postcard arrived. No return address. Just a beach. A European cliff. And 2 words, I'm sorry. It was postmarked from Corsica. Michael had run. But now the world knew the truth. 2 months later. The Graves family name had crumbled. Elena was offered multiple book deals. TV documentaries. Magazine exclusives. She turned them all down. Because her story wasn't for profit. It was for justice. The Lila Foundation expanded rapidly. Women from across the country wrote in, visited, sought answers. Each one got a chance to speak. Each one found a safe place, finally. And each one added a name to the garden wall. A memorial Elena had built behind the mansion. Among those names were Lila Moreno, Catherine Graves, and newly added Jasmine Healy. Jasmine was a new case. A 17-year-old girl who had vanished from a private academy in New York, last seen with a man connected to the Ashford legal group. Her disappearance hadn't made national news. But Elena saw the signs. She had once been invisible too. But not anymore. She vowed Jasmine's name wouldn't end in silence. 3 weeks later, a visitor. Daniel passed peacefully in his sleep one morning in early spring. Elena held his hand as the nurse turned off the machines. There were no tears. Only quiet music, and the hum of sunlight through glass. He had died with a photo of Lila beside him. Elena buried him in the garden. Beside her mother. Beneath the ivy. On the day of the unveiling of the new center, a wing named after Daniel Moreno, Elena stepped into her mother's old maid's quarters one last time. She hadn't entered it in months. But something pulled her there. And taped beneath the drawer, old, yellowed, was a final envelope. Inside. A letter from Lila. Written before her last disappearance. Lila's final letter. Undated. My Elena. I hope you never have to read this. I hope the world is kinder than I think. But if you are reading this, it means you came looking. It means you remembered. You always had your father's heart, kind, strong, unwilling to look away from pain. I tried to keep you from mine, but the past has roots too deep for silence. Michael was not always a monster. But power feeds on fear, and fear turns good men cruel. I don't hate him. I pity him. If I am gone, it's because I chose truth over comfort. And I believe one day, you will too. Don't just wear my ring. Be the woman who earned it. You are not a maid's daughter. You are a woman of fire. Love you always. Mama. Elena folded the letter gently, eyes misted but dry. Then she stood in front of the mirror. And she smiled. Not because the pain was gone. But because the truth was no longer hidden. Elena's life had changed irrevocably. The media frenzy, the public scrutiny, they had all faded, replaced by a quiet, resolute purpose. The Lila Foundation flourished, a beacon for victims, a platform for truth. Yet, beneath its shining exterior, something darker was stirring. One chilly autumn morning, 6 months after Daniel's passing. Elena sat in her office at the Foundation's headquarters, a tall glass of chamomile tea growing cold beside her. She stared out at the ivy-draped walls of the estate, now glowing with the amber of early morning sun. The Foundation had taken on dozens of new cases in recent weeks. Cases that seemed routine on the surface, but when Elena read through them, a familiar pattern began to emerge, one she didn't expect. A pattern that whispered the past was far from finished. Her phone buzzed sharply, pulling her attention. It was a message from Sarah. We need to talk. Now. Urgent. Elena's heart quickened. Sarah never sent messages like this without reason. At the Foundation conference room, an hour later. Sarah was pacing. Her expression grim. I've been digging into Jasmine Healy's case, Sarah said, voice low. There's something off. Elena frowned. What do you mean? I thought her disappearance was linked to Ashford's network. Sarah shook her head. It is. But Ashford's network is just a small piece. Someone else has been manipulating things, more recently, and with much more precision. Elena leaned forward. Who? Sarah swallowed. I don't know yet. But it's someone inside the Foundation. Elena felt the room tilt. Her mind raced. Could it be a leak? A betrayal? Someone using her mother's legacy to hide darker deeds? Over the next week, Elena and Sarah launched an internal investigation. They reviewed financial records, personnel files, and communications, anything that might reveal the mole. The Foundation had grown rapidly, and with rapid growth came vulnerabilities. It was a chilly Thursday when Sarah found the first clue. An unauthorized transfer. A large sum moved to an offshore account, linked to a man named Richard Halloway. Richard Halloway was a name Elena hadn't heard before. A quick background check revealed he was a former Graves family lawyer, dismissed years ago after accusations of embezzlement. Elena stared at his file, mind buzzing. Could he be trying to sabotage us? She wondered aloud. Sarah nodded. Maybe. But why? And how did he get access? The question gnawed at Elena. The foundation had always been careful with security. That evening, Elena stayed late, scrolling through email logs. There it was, a suspicious login at 2:43 a.m. from an unrecognized IP address. Cross-referencing revealed it matched Richard Holloway's last known location. Elena's breath caught. Someone had hacked their system. And whoever it was knew exactly what to do. The next day, Elena confronted the staff. She didn't accuse anyone, but she made it clear, trust was fragile. "We are a family," she said, voice steady. "But family must be honest." The room was silent. Days passed, tension thickened. Then, a package arrived at the foundation's doorstep. No return address. Inside was a USB drive. Elena's hands trembled as she plugged it into her computer. Files loaded. Documents. Emails. Photographs. All exposing corruption inside the foundation. And a video file named "The Truth About Lila." Elena hesitated, then clicked play. The screen flickered. A shaky recording began. On screen was a man's voice, distorted. "You think you know the truth about Lila Moreno? You don't know the half of it." The video showed a young woman, not Lila, but someone resembling her, visiting a secret location. The narrator continued, "Lila was part of something bigger. Something no one wanted you to find." Elena's pulse thundered. Who was this woman? What bigger secret? The video cut abruptly. She called Sarah. "We have to dig deeper," Elena said. "We're not just fighting a mole anymore. We're fighting a shadow." Over the next few days, Elena received several anonymous messages. Clues. Threats. Hints about a conspiracy reaching beyond the Graves family, a network that spanned decades. One night, Elena awoke to a noise outside her window. A shadow moved through the garden. She grabbed her phone, but the figure vanished before she could get a clear look. The next morning, she found a note taped to her door. "Stop looking or you'll lose everything." Elena's resolve only hardened. She reached out to Daniel's old contacts. Together, they uncovered a list of names, powerful individuals linked to the Graves legacy, all with vested interests in keeping secrets buried. Among them, a prominent politician with ties to illegal land deals. A business tycoon who had profited from Graves' downfall. A mysterious woman known only as the Widow, rumored to orchestrate cover-ups from the shadows. Elena realized this was no longer just a personal fight. It was a battle for justice on a national scale. Meanwhile, Sarah discovered that Richard Holloway was in contact with the Widow. Together, they were undermining the foundation, sowing distrust. Elena decided to confront the network head-on. She arranged a covert meeting with one of the Widow's known associates. The meeting took place in a secluded café, where Elena sat, heart pounding, facing a man named Victor. Victor was sharp, cold, but nervous. He warned Elena to back off. "This goes beyond your mother. You're in over your head." But Elena smiled. "I've never been afraid of the truth." The confrontation sparked a chain reaction. Investigative journalists caught wind of the story. Public outrage grew. Elena's foundation became a symbol of resistance. But the threats escalated. Her staff received menacing calls. Her home was broken into. Yet, every attack only strengthened Elena's resolve. In the story's climax, Elena uncovered a hidden archive beneath the Graves estate. Inside were documents proving systematic corruption, bribery, and even orchestrated disappearances spanning generations. With the evidence in hand, Elena went public. The foundation released the files. Government officials were forced to act. Several arrests followed. In the final scene, Elena stood before a crowd, holding her mother's ring. "This ring represents truth, resilience, and justice," she said. "May it remind us all, the past may be dark, but the future belongs to those who fight for the light." The crowd erupted in applause. Elena smiled. The fight was far from over. But she was ready.